All right. And we are live. Welcome, everybody, to our very first Killer Author Club of 2025. We've got a fantastic plan for you, and we're beginning with the dynamic duo of Elizabeth McCullough, Keenan, and Greg Wands. So we'll be asking all about trust issues in just a minute. So grab your cocktail and your list of questions for Killers Elizabeth and Greg, and we'll see you on the flip side.
Welcome to the Killer Author Club. 3 best-selling authors talking about killing, of the fictional kind, with the best thriller and suspense authors in the business. Killer conversations, killer cocktails, and killer guests, with your hosts, Kimberly Bell, Heather Gudenkauf, and Kara Ruda. This is the Killer Author Club.
Yay. Hi, everybody. And hello to our new members and to the Killer Author Club OGs online or listening to the podcast. We are so glad to welcome you to the club. I'm Killer Kara Ruda.
I'm Killer Kimberly Bell.
And I'm Killer Heather Gudenkauf.
And tonight we have Killers Elizabeth and Greg here with us to answer every burning question about trust issues. We all loved the book. We have tons to talk about along with all the usual killer fun. Speaking of fun, here's our shameless plug. How about some fun in your inbox? The Killers have a newsletter only once a month, so we won't spam you, promise. So sign up today at killerauthorclub.com. Also, if you can't get enough of our live shows, we now have Killer Postmortem, otherwise known as the After Show, and it's only on the Killer Author Club podcast. Tonight's show will be available on your favorite podcasting app this Friday, and also killerauthorclub.com. Okay, enough of that. Kimberly, will you please introduce our special guest?
I would love that. Elizabeth McCullough Keenan and Greg Wands are internationally best-selling novelists whose work has been featured in Entertainment Weekly, BuzzFeed, Pop Sugar, and numerous other media outlets. They are the co-creators and co-hosts of the podcast Imposter Hour with Liz and Greg. The show explores the imposter syndrome that plagues creatives. Oh, what do you mean? And how it influences their lives and work. Elizabeth, a 2-decade publishing veteran, lives in Pennsylvania with her husband and son. And Greg, who writes for the screen in addition to the page, grew up in Sag Harbor, New York, and now calls Manhattan home. Congrats, Elizabeth and Greg, and welcome to the Killer Author Club Hot Seat.
Thank you so much. It's so great to be here, Killers.
Thanks for having us.
We're excited to have you, and we have so many questions about trust issues, but could you start with giving us a brief little elevator pitch for the book?
Sure. We'll give you a little 1-2 punch because there's 2 of us. So our cinematic elevator pitch is Catch Me If You Can meets Knives Out with a splash of Mr. Robot.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with that. Love it.
And I'll give you a brief plot synopsis. It's hard to call them protagonists, but our main characters, Hazel and Kagan Bailey, who are adult siblings, they have a somewhat strained relationship and are somewhat estranged from their mother, Janice, who at the onset of the book dies under suspicious circumstances. Janice's husband, Perry, who the siblings have never really taken too much time to get to know, but have always been somewhat leery of. Shortly thereafter, after Janice's death, absconds with the siblings' inheritance. So basically, this sets them on the path of the story, which involves a road trip and a revenge plot, trying to sort of find Perry and get their comeuppance and retrieve their presumed inheritance. Along the way, they run into kind of the last family member they suspected, and that veers this onto a very, very different course. So I would say Trust Issues, it's a con man story, it's a family story, it's a road trip story, and it also has somewhat of a surprising redemption arc at the end.
Well, we loved it. And readers, get chatty and start dropping in your questions in the comments for us to ask of our killer guests. But first, it's time to talk about this episode's special drink.
Yes, the Killers, we love our killer cocktails and mocktails and tasty drinks. So every episode, we ask our killer guests to come equipped with their favorites. So the recipe for tonight's drink and all the other killer cocktails from past episodes can be found at killerauthor.com under the Killer Cocktails tab. So killers Greg and Elizabeth have chosen the Gimlito as their special drink tonight. And here it is. Can you tell us why you chose this specially named drink?
So Liz actually gets credit for this. It was in her chapter that this drink materialized. It is a combination of a gimlet and a mojito. And Kagan, who's the brother who I mentioned earlier, spends a lot of the action of the book addled. And at this point in the story, they've checked into a hotel in Boca Raton. He has taken some liberties with the hotel minibar and has decided to play bartender in order to impress someone who's dropped by that he's looking to impress. And this is what he's come up with. So, salud.
So cheers and congratulations on another fabulous read. We loved it.
Thank you.
So you actually invented this drink,
I
Elizabeth.
mean, we just combined two.
Yeah.
Combined two drinks.
Liz, I'll let you talk about the moment.
No, I mean, it was a imagined, we have this kind of problematic drinker among other things, Kagan, and I think he was trying to figure out how he could get even more booze into one glass. So why not combine two classically heavily boozed drinks?
Love it.
So the Killer started the Killer Author Club 2 years ago so that readers like you can interact with some of the best suspense and thriller authors in the business. Our winter and spring lineup includes superstars like Greg Hurwitz, Lisa Unger, Hannah Morrissey, Nikki French, and so many more. For dates, times, and past episodes, surf to the one place, killerauthorclub.com. Okay, tonight we're here to talk about trust issues. Ashley Winstead says, no one is who they seem in this epic cat and mouse game that pits a whole cast of con artists, some more willing to cop to the title than others, against each other in a race to outwit and outmaneuver. And Jimmy Giuliano said, come for the fast-paced suspense and stay for the delightful sibling rivalry. So fun. It really is a great story. Okay, so Greg and Elizabeth, you guys are obviously high-powered killing team. And now we need to know your answer to the killer question. How do you kill?
I think I'll take this one. So we don't want to spoil anything, but I think in this book, it's safe to say we prefer to let gravity do the heavy lifting. But every kill has its own unique flavor. I'll leave it there.
It does. Okay. I saw scrolling through here a question, which is one of my questions. When did you guys start collaborating and how did it come about that you became a writing team?
We met one another the first week of our freshman year of college, which is going back now almost 3 decades. And we got along famously right off the jump. We realized pretty shortly thereafter that it was because we had this sort of understanding, having come from very similar family backgrounds, having grown up, obviously the same generation, and realizing that we had a lot of the same cultural touchstones. We watched a lot of the same things growing up, TV and films. We read a lot of the same books as kids and as young adults. And so we had this shorthand as friends, and we both, I think we're somewhat shyly harboring maybe a dream of writing at some point. And when the time we had been early readers of each other's stuff along the way. We were in a writers group together at one point. And we just, when the time came about, it made sense to embark on this kind of journey together, and we did, and it worked out beautifully.
Yeah, so nice. I love that story. It's a great origin story. So how do you decide who writes what in this kind of co-writing situation? Because it's not like the character, it just seems like it's just all seamlessly works together.
Well, thank you for that. It takes as you all know, it takes a lot of revising to get to that seamlessness. But, we come up with the concept for the book that we want to write. We start to spitball, develop, outline. We decide which characters we want to kind of take the lead on. And then we write usually it depends. It depends on the book. In this book, we kind of changed our point of views that we wrote in. We had been writing pretty much exclusively in like a close first, but this one is actually in third, which was a fun adventure.
That's what I was wondering. In third, that's hard, I would think, to do.
Why did you decide to do that?
I think it felt we were kind of we wanted to up the ante for sure and kind of change the process. And the thing about Close First was that it can be pretty limiting, I think. And for the con man trope, which is a little bit different than what we've done with our first 3 books, I think we wanted to have a little more distance for the reader and also for ourselves. I don't know if you would agree with that, Greg. And, you know, but then when we kind of decide which characters we're going to take the lead on and then what point of view works best for the collective, then, you know, I'll write a chapter in the voice of my character. I'll kick it over to Greg, try and ruin his day. And then we'll respond in turn to that chapter and kind of what we've loosely outlined. So that's kind of a simplified version of how we do it.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Awesome.
And you talked about how the con man is a little new for you in writing, but I saw in your acknowledgments you talked a little bit about how some of the idea came from personal experiences that friends and family had. Do you want to share anything that came along with that?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, we have a good friend who a number of years ago was a victim of a romance con, and it was very elaborate and long. And seeing that friend kind of go through that experience of meeting, falling in love with, and building a life with someone who turned out to be like someone completely different than they thought, and then losing everything financially, emotionally, all of the ways in which con artists rob people. That really stuck with us about how people who are so emotionally, intellectually intelligent can be taken. So there was that aspect, and that was kind of like a kernel. And then actually in the writing of this book, my husband, who's a entrepreneur and a small business owner, was the victim of a con artist. Luckily, it wasn't for very much money, and we kind of saw it coming, but it was very interesting to see life imitating art in that way. So, and unfortunately, I think we've both known people in, you know, the intermittent years between our first friend and then the thing that happened when we were writing this, who've had various experiences, whether it's romance, finance, you know, there are scams happening every time you log onto your computer, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I think romance would be really scary though, because that takes it to a whole nother, it's different than just getting catfished on, you know, the internet, but like romance is so up close and personal and personal.
Yeah.
Yeah. You believe, I have a friend that had that happen too. And she was so in love with this person who really didn't exist. I mean, he wasn't who he said he was. He's absolutely opposite. Yeah. So, oh, you know what I loved too is the double entendre with the title, with the trust, you know, they're all after the money and the trust, and then they all have complete trust issues.
Right.
Did you guys come up with that, or was that something the publisher did? Or
we actually, as often happens, as I'm sure you guys have been through the process of, is, you know, sometimes they'll have a working title. Occasionally that working, I think maybe the one time for us, the second book that we had, In Case of Emergency, we were sort of amazed. We came up with the title and we're amazed it hadn't been taken already. It's perfectly that. The other, I think all 3 of the other ones have been kind of by committee. And this one was actually, this was by committee with Dutton. Somebody had thrown that idea into the pot. We had a couple of working titles. One was Confluence, which Liz came up with, which had a kind of a fun double meaning as well. Yeah. But then when they threw trust issues back our way, it just, as you said, I mean, it just works on both of those levels so cleanly. So we just, everyone jumped on that one.
Yeah, it's great.
It's a great title.
Thank you. And everyone has trust issues, so we're hoping that everyone will buy it. Maybe people will mistake it as a self-help book.
Right, exactly. Which I guess in a way, I guess it's a cautionary self-help book if you, read it in a certain light. So
yeah.
And I got such a kick out of the siblings. I mean, they so much fun, but oh man, they, you know, I have 5 older brothers and sisters, and I, you know, our shenanigans, but these 2 really take the cake. But they're very damaged for many reasons. And you know, we meet Hazel, and she has an interesting way of earning money. And you know, they all have their addictions, and for her, it's her phone and screen time, which I think, you know, in the book, you talked a little bit about how she was always reaching for her phone. And then like, while I was reading, I was reaching for my phone. I'm like, oh my goodness, me and Hazel and I might have something in common. But tell us a little bit about the siblings and where they came from.
Well, Heather, I just wanted to say that I identify with that. I was reaching for my phone as I was writing that, so it's real. I think we definitely were excited to write from the sibling perspective. Both Greg and I are one of 3 siblings, although our relationships with our siblings and our actual siblings are very different than the characters in the book. But we also really appreciated, and I should back up and say, like, to an extent, Greg and I have a sibling relationship. We've been friends for so long through so many aspects of our lives. And as he mentioned, we were both children of divorce. We had similar family dynamics. So we were really interested in unpacking the kind of ways in which siblings can both like embolden each other, lift each other up, but also like manipulate and just cut right to the quick, because they know all of the emotional passwords. They know all of the, the kind of self-destruct stuff that comes along with family dynamic. And with these 2 siblings in particular, because there has been so much trauma in their past and they're both kind of self-medicating in their own ways to cope, we wanted to see what would happen when we put 2 really damaged people together in a situation where they could kind of find a unified purpose. And that's what happens with Perry. Like, if they had a common enemy, they can pretty much ignore all of their own personal defects and focus their energy on that. And, I think hilarity ensued and a lot of good plot stuff happened. So it was a treat, because we've written as friends, as neighbors, as husband and wife, but we had never written as siblings.
Nailed it.
Yeah, nailed it. Yeah.
All the little jabs they do to each other is hilarious.
I love a book where you can laugh, especially in a thriller, because it doesn't always have, they're not always humorous, but this one was very funny. Yeah.
Good.
Hilarity ensues. I'm looking for some of the questions. There are still a lot of questions about writing together, and I lost it. There was someone who asked, I'll find it back, about the challenges of writing together. And as a co-author, I'm always interested in that too. Like, what do you do?
Do you use rock, paper, scissors to things, or how do you decide?
We kind of, I think, because we've known each other for a long time, and because we're dear friends, we just have a very, we have a respectful and very open line of communication, which, in our friendship and relationship, but then also now in our professional relationship and our creative collaboration. And I think what we do, because Liz alluded to this earlier, we have this back and forth volley style. So I write a chapter, I kick it over to her, and we do structure the thing pretty loosely up front. And we do that specifically so that there are options along the way and a lot of room along the way for, if one of us comes up with an idea, we kind of throw it in there without necessarily alerting the other person. And that's where a lot of the fun is. It has a sort of an improvisational style. So we're just kicking ideas back in all the time. It's almost like the way we write, it's almost replicating the experience of reading a thriller, because I don't know what's going to happen in the next chapter. I can write one and I can throw it her way, but I don't know how she's going to come back on it. So she can double back and throw a twist in that I hadn't anticipated whatsoever. And then part of the challenge of that, and also the fun of that, is to try and pick up on that thread and then see where we can take that thread. And more often than not, sometimes we'll write ourselves into a corner where it just doesn't quite jive and we have to do that. But we have a pretty good, I think we have a very respectful style, just saying like, this is great, but maybe it doesn't work here. And sometimes we'll put stuff aside, and sometimes we're able to work it into something else. But more often than not, it does work. And I think that the reason it works as well as it does in most cases is because we come in with that respect for one another and wanting to make the story work, in these things that we throw in, and wanting it to be the best story ultimately that it can be, and the most fresh and dynamic, and kind of have that sort of improvisatory high wire feel to it. Because I think as a reader, that's one of the things that we both love as readers of thrillers as well.
Yeah,
you're kind of pantsing along the way, really.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a bit of that.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Yay for Answers.
Yes, you're a pantser as well.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, Kimberly's a very big plotter, and Heather's learning how to plot, and they're both trying to help me learn how to plot a little bit. But I'm a pantser at heart for sure. Yeah.
Okay.
So you guys bring a good balance to your trio. I like that.
Yeah,
Thanks, bro.
I think so.
I think so too. We have fun, that's for sure.
Yeah. And Lecha asks, how many books have you guys done together? Because this is what, your third?
This is our fourth book together.
Wow.
Yeah, our first three books are under a pseudonym. Our pen name is E.G. Scott, which is the combination of our two first initials and then Greg's middle name. And we did that for a number of reasons. And then for this book, our fourth, we are writing under our own names, which is really exciting. And, you know, we figured if we're writing about a con man and we're writing about kind of showing truth and authenticity, we need to do it ourselves. So we're writing as the real selves.
Wow, so you're going to step into the spotlight. All right. I like it.
Well, and you mentioned a little bit about Imposter Hour. Tell us about your podcast.
Ooh. Okay, well, as with you'll sense a pattern in this conversation. As with most of our creative partnership, Liz usually comes up with the good ideas, and then I just kind of zoom right along and am able to ride her coattails. So we were in that sort of mid-point in the process where we've turned in the manuscript, but the books, our pub day is like months and months out. Mm-hmm. And for both of us, I think, we talk about this a little bit, like momentum is such a great, the more you can harness momentum in writing or any sort of creative field, the more that kind of carries you through and keeps you fresh and keeps you engaged. And so Liz had this idea of, talking to, you guys and talking to other thriller writers, either at Thriller Fest or at a book event or on a panel or whatever else it is, or on a podcast. The idea of imposter syndrome was just one of these things that kept coming up, right? We realized, everyone has a version of it. And I think in the creative arts, especially, you don't necessarily have a delineated path in terms of your career and what those parameters of success are necessarily. And so it's just really interesting always to kind of hear what everyone's unique take on that is. And so Liz had this great idea of, well, why don't we do a podcast? And it's basically just an excuse to have a hangout with writers that we would want to talk to anyway. And a really good entry point could be everyone's experience with imposter syndrome. Mm-hmm. Also then, because we're in the thriller space, often writers are writing about imposter characters. So that's another way in. Or in some cases, if somebody has had a real life experience with an imposter, that can make for an interesting story or anecdote. And so we just jumped into it, sort of not knowing what we were doing. We're hooked up with a wonderful producer, Kate Herget, who has really shepherded us in terms of doing all the technical stuff and giving us all the framework for it. And then Liz and I go in and we just, we kind of hang out and have fun and let that entryway of the imposter thing sort of then be a conduit into larger discussions.
Yeah.
Very fun.
And I'll just add, you guys might have this experience. I feel like a lot of writers we've talked to do, where you spend so much time kind of toiling away on a book and doing research, and you end up with all of this information you don't get to use in the story. So we had been researching con artists and cons for like over a year, and there was so much we didn't get to put into the book. So to be able to bring that onto the podcast is just like another way to kind of, scratch that itch of wanting to talk about this more.
Yeah. Love
So
it.
much fun.
And it's on all the podcasting apps.
It is. Yes.
Yes.
And they're going to have the Killer Author Club on soon.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Love that.
I invited us on. Okay, you guys, it is now time for the Killer
It
Giveaway.
is time. Elizabeth and Greg are giving away 2 copies of Trust Issues to lucky U.S. viewers. Doesn't matter if you're watching us on Facebook or Instagram or YouTube. We scour the comments everywhere we stream, but please make sure to shout out where you're from. For a chance to win Trust Issues, correctly answer this question. What is the name of the podcast that Greg and Elizabeth co-host?
This should be easy.
And it should be fresh in your memory.
Okay. And Heather.
Yes. So every episode, we talk about favorite independent booksellers because we are such big fans and we want to support them in any way we can, which is why we ask every author to tell us their favorites. So Elizabeth and Greg have chosen 3 Lives and Company booksellers in West Village, New York City. Tell us a little bit more about this bookstore.
Yeah, it's an amazing bookstore. It's very special to both of us. It actually, when Greg and I both lived in the city, it was kind of equidistant from in between where he lived on Jane Street and where I lived on Jones Street. It's a incredible, West Village institution. It's about the size of your first studio apartment. Would you say, Greg? It's about 250 square feet.
Yeah.
Toby, the owner, and all of the booksellers there are readers through and through. The hand selling in that store is amazing. If you walk in and say, I need a book that does this, this, and this, they'll hand you 3 books that you'll just fall in love with. Yes. And they've been big supporters of ours. And yeah, we couldn't recommend it more. Greg, anything else you want to add?
I'll just do a quick sort of corollary shout out. One of the booksellers there for years, Amanda Friss, recently opened up her own shop called Parentheses Books down in Virginia. And while we haven't yet been, it sounds amazing. And we're very excited to get down there to support her as well. So anyone in that area.
Yeah, whenever we hear about a new bookstore, a fairy gets their wings, and so
that's right.
We'll be dropping the link to Trust Issues in the comments, so you can order it along with any other books on your wish list.
Exactly. All right, and obviously the Killers love to read, and everybody watching and listening loves to read too. And the Killer Author Club is the place to share the love for fabulous books. So, Greg and Elizabeth, can you share with us like what you've just completed reading or any book recommendations?
Greg, you want to go first?
Sure, I'll jump in. So I'm a little more than halfway through right now. Ashley Winstead's next book, This Book Will Bury Me, which is out officially.
So good. Love it.
So jealous.
You guys know. So that one will be out. Pre-order now. It is out officially in March, but it is... it's Ashley doing what Ashley does. So jump on that. And if you haven't read Ashley before out there, any of the listeners out there, remedy that immediately.
I second that. She's great.
Yeah.
And I just finished last week the amazing Fiona Davis's new novel, The Stolen Queen, which came out last Tuesday, I believe. And I just have to say, before I met Fiona, I said I didn't like historical fiction, and I now have to rescind that statement forever. And this is a historical fiction mystery thriller. It is just page-turning, tear-jerking. I couldn't put it down. It's about ancient Egypt. It's about a curator, a mystery, a stolen artifact. There's kind of a love story. There's so much in this book. You kind of can't believe she just made it so seamless and beautiful. And I can't stop recommending it to everyone. So check it out. The Stolen Queen.
And I want to buy that right now. Exactly.
I know. Sold.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. And you guys, we have a Killer alumni author to celebrate tonight. We're so excited about Megan Collins' new release, Cross My Heart, out today.
Also great.
Yep. A heart transplant patient becomes romantically obsessed with her donor's husband. She has his wife's heart. The one she wants is his. Megan's giving away 1 copy, so be sure to shout out in the comments if you'd like to be entered.
That's a great premise.
Yeah, it is.
All right, and we have a couple more amazing reads to celebrate tonight. 2 new releases to add to your toppling TBR. First, check out Dead Money by Jacob Kerr. A Silicon Valley fixer investigates a billionaire founder's death while pursuing her own agenda in this twisty, sharply observed debut mystery from a tech world insider. And we also have Cold Storage by Michael Grumley. When Army veteran John Reef is revived in the back of a dilapidated ambulance, he finds himself on the run from a shadowy organization that's desperate to take him back. We have 3 copies of Dead Money and 1 of Cold Storage to give away to lucky U.S. viewers. You know the drill. Drop a comment if you'd like to be entered for any or all of these books. And remember to tell us where you're from. Good luck. And don't forget to check out the killer's latest books. Find out what the nanny saw in the sequel to Kara's The Second Mrs. Strom.
And Heather's latest Everyone is Watching is Big Brother Meets Clue, and a reality show gone horribly wrong.
And Paris is always a good idea, and so is Kimberly's The Paris Widow, about a dream vacation gone awry.
So good.
So good. So, and it's that time of the show where membership has its privileges. So if you're on Facebook, check out our private members only group called the Killer Author Club, where all the killer magic is found, like giveaways. So every episode, the killers choose a name from the hat to win a piece of swag: t-shirts, mugs, candles, totes, hats, all of which can be found at killerauthorclub.com. Thank you, Greg. And tonight's winner is Bubba Wilson. So Bubba, make sure that you contact one of the killers and send us your address, and we'll send you some Killer Authors swag your way. And folks, if you'd like to throw your name into the hat to win some swag, all you have to do is become a member of the Killer Author Club Facebook group. The link is coming to you in the comments.
Okay. All right. And Greg, Elizabeth, we have great news for you. You have survived the Killer Author Club.
Yes.
To commemorate that, we're going to put this big badge right on your faces. So there you go.
It's an honor.
It is an honor, yes. And very few survived, so we're really glad you guys did. So could you guys tell us where our listeners and viewers can find you when you're not here on the Killer Author Club?
Sure.
Well, we are, as we mentioned, you can tune in to hear us on Imposter Hour with Liz and Greg, with our myriad of wonderful creative guests. And that is, as you mentioned, on all of the streaming platforms. You can also find us at Liz and Greg Wright on IG. Liz, what else are we on currently?
We're also on Facebook at Liz and Greg Wright, and imposterhour.com, and on IG, Imposter Hour. So we're all over the place, guys. We can't shut up.
So no excuses.
Yeah, check us out, follow us, like us, chat us up. We love it. We love to hear from readers.
Yeah.
Love it. Awesome. Well, thank you guys for being here. And that does it for tonight's episode. Thanks to everyone for tuning in, and make sure to mark your calendars for 2 weeks from tonight, January 28th. Same time, same place, when Joshua Mooling will be joining the Killer Author Club to tell us all about A Long Time Gone. It is so good. In the meantime, please find us wasting entirely too much time on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok for all the information you need: times, upcoming schedule, past episode, recipes, merch, podcast links. Surf to killerauthorclub.com. Thanks for being part of the club.
That does it for tonight's show. Thank you for tuning in. If you'd like to catch our next show live, we're every other Tuesday night on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. For times, upcoming schedule, and to catch up on past episodes, visit us at killerauthorclub.com. Happy reading. Now get on out there and kill that TBR.